Today on the Bandrew Says podcast, we will not be discussing any kind of news because there wasn't any, but instead I will be addressing quite a few amazing questions, such as the different approach to recording audio versus streaming audio, upgrading from dynamic microphones to condenser microphones, and a whole lot more, so go ahead and stick around. We are jumping directly into the What You Had to Say section, and I'll tell you what. This first one is somewhat contentious, so I apologize ahead of time. It comes from Jerry, and he says, I don't know. Freedom of speech says otherwise. It's up to the viewer to believe you or not. This whole responsibility debate is a bit too controlling. He can say what he wants, to an extent, and you can say what you want. You don't have to explain, and he doesn't have to apologize. That's the old America. Jerry, thank you very much for this comment. I always appreciate people sharing their differing points of views. I will start my response with a question. Do you really want to model our current society off of old America in terms of freedom of speech? Because I think you'll find that in old America with freedom of speech, if somebody was offended, if their honor felt attacked, they wouldn't just say, whatever, they can think what they want. They would have a duel at dawn. They would shoot each other. So I don't know if old America is really the model we should be looking to for freedom of speech and the enforcement of freedom of speech. I will say that having responsibility for the words that come out of your mouth doesn't seem like a free speech issue. It's not saying you can't say this. It's saying you have a responsibility. You should try to meet that responsibility. You're not required to. But I don't know about you. The way that I was brought up, what I was always taught is I should take responsibility for what I say and what I do. At no point over the last few weeks have I suggested that people should be jailed for outputting incorrect information. I didn't even suggest that people should be banned for putting out incorrect information. I even went so far as to say and reiterate that if some dope in your audience misunderstands what you say and uses that as justification to do something harmful, that is not your fault. All I pointed out was that people will inevitably blame you for it. They will blame you for it even though it is not your fault. I pointed that out because I wanted to make sure people understood that by including disclaimers, it is a CYA situation, a cover your own butt, to keep it a little bit PG-13. As far as apologizing, again, I never said that Jay should apologize. He made a mistake. Everybody makes mistakes, and it was a relatively low-tier mistake that doesn't matter for most people. I am just an audio nerd. People who follow my channel are audio nerds, so of course we're a little bit butthurt when somebody doesn't get the information right. For the majority of people, it doesn't matter. But if none of this is addressing your comment and you believe that this is how things should work, where you have no responsibility for what you say, I challenge you to go to your boss and say, F you, boss, you suck at your job, I hate you, you're the worst, I wish a plague upon your house, I dare you to do it. You won't do it, because you understand that you have a responsibility for what you say, and what you say does have consequences. You can't just say anything you want at any time. Well, I guess technically you can, but there will be repercussions for that. Telling your boss to F themselves will most likely lead to you getting fired. Oh, but in old America, no. Not in old America, no. No, just stop it. What about teachers? Do you think that teachers being required to have a curriculum is infringing on their freedom of speech? Do you think it is an infringement of freedom of speech for teachers to be required to teach students that 2 + 2 = 4? Do you think that is infringing on their freedom of speech? That is a serious question. Because I don't think it is an infringement on their freedom of speech. They are in a position where they have a responsibility to provide accurate information. If they don't want that responsibility, they don't take the job. Again, the thing that I was always taught and the way that I was brought up is that you should always take responsibility for what you say and what you do. That means that I stand behind what I say, and if I get something incorrect, I will come out, make a correction, and eat my words. I am not above admitting that I am wrong. You may view that as me self-censoring or kowtowing to some outrage mobs who might be looking to get me. No, the way that I view it is ensuring that I don't mislead people, and in so doing that, I am ensuring that I don't soil and ruin my reputation. I know I got a little bit heated, a little bit hot-headed there, but I do love free speech, so somebody saying that I am advocating for behavior that kind of infringes on that kind of bothers me. You can say whatever you want. I couldn't care less. You have the right to do it. If you're in America, I don't know about the rest of the world, but if you're in America, you absolutely have the right to say most things. I am not saying that you don't. But Cherry, thank you very much for leaving that comment. I had a lot of fun responding to what you said, and I appreciate you. So keep doing what you're doing and keep saying what you want to say. Thank you very much. Next comment comes from Rodney, and he says, "Very well done. Agreed that content is the key element. However, I have stopped listening to videos due to garbage audio, and that was even before I knew anything about audio. I still don't know anything about audio, but if someone sounds like they're talking in an echo chamber or they're clipping real bad, I'm out." Rodney, thank you for leaving that comment, and I am right there with you in most cases, but I am also somewhat forgiving, which I don't think a lot of people would assume of me. They would think he's the guy who yells about audio all day. He's going to be really harsh. I'm very forgiving as long as the content is good. The two guys I mentioned last week, it's Drew Gooden and Danny Gonzalez. They use Yetis. They don't record in well-treated rooms. They record a foot, maybe 2 feet away from the microphone, so you can definitely hear the room, and it's not the best sounding audio, but the content is so good that I am willing to overlook that. The content is the most important thing. But at the same time, there have been many cases where I can't even watch or listen to something because the audio is so bad. Just look at all of these late night talk show hosts who sound like they're recording in echo chambers. It is unlistenable to me, and the content isn't very good to begin with. So I refuse to watch that stuff, but I agree with you. Content is the most important key element. Thank you very much, Rodney. I appreciate you. Next, we got a comment from Stefan, and he says, "Could you do something about the difference between recording and releasing like a podcast and live streaming where you have to or should do the processing live in real time, e.g. gate, EQ, de-esser, compressor, etc., like in hardware, e.g. DBX286S or GoXLR, etc., or software, Sonable comes to mind? Regards." Stefan, thank you very much for that comment, and this actually spurred a moment of spontaneity for me while I was preparing for this podcast, and I wanted to record a very quick demonstration and tutorial on how I would approach setting up my audio in OBS to get the best sound possible. It's not going to be the most processed radio broadcast ready sound, but it addresses one of the biggest issues that I see on streaming, and that is people clipping their damn microphones when they get excited. So in this tutorial, I walk through how to address that and how to fix it and all the settings that you need to do to make sure that you don't clip your microphone when you get really excited and start yelling. So here is that tutorial. I hope it helps. So here is a quick example of setting your gain so you're getting a healthier level. But if I were to get excited and start yelling, "Oh my God!" we start clipping. That does not sound good. So how can we resolve this? My first suggestion is to turn the gain down on your preamp so you're hitting around negative 18 dB. So now I have done that, and then if I were to scream, "Oh my God!" I don't clip. So we're off to a good start. Now we are going to add some filters that are built into OBS. So we will click on the settings icon for our microphone input. Then we will select the filters option. Then we will click the plus button. We will add a compressor. We will decrease the ratio from 10:1. We will go 4:1, which is a pretty healthy ratio to use for a compressor. Because we're hitting such a low level, we'll maybe drop it down to negative 21 dB. We're not going to add any kind of makeup gain here, and we don't need any kind of side chain or ducking source, so we're good with the compressor now. Next, we are going to add a limiter to ensure that our levels don't ever exceed a certain point. So let's go ahead and add that. We will decrease the threshold to maybe negative 15. Let's go negative 16 dB. That means no sound will ever be above 16 decibels. So if I were to scream, the loudest that will be is 16 dB. It just crushes the hell out of that signal with a ratio of infinity to 1. A limiter is essentially a compressor with that ratio of infinity to 1. Next, because we are still a little bit quiet, we are going to add gain to that. So we will go ahead and add the gain effect. And here we will add maybe 10 dB of gain and see where we are. Once I move the filters window out of the way and look at my meter, I'm hitting around negative 15 to negative 10 dB. And if I scream, oh my God, I'm still only hitting around negative 7 dB. So we might be able to give it a few more dB. Now I have plus 12 dB on the gain filter. And now if I get excited, I don't clip. And I'm still only hitting around negative 4 dB, and this is a much healthier output level for OBS. You avoid the clipping at the sound source, at the A to D converter in your interface, and it just sounds so much better. So this is how I would set up a live streaming recording if I didn't have analog limiters and analog compressors and all of that. So I hope that helps distinguish the difference between recording your audio and processing it in post versus how you would set up your audio for live streaming. But if I were to get excited and start yelling, oh my God, now I have plus 12 dB on the gain filter. And now if I get excited, I don't clip. Next up, we got a comment from Emerald, and they say, I will stick to my comment last week. That being said, yes, Jay does have impact on his audience, but again, it is more towards PC tech. I honestly thought his video was funny because I knew he didn't set it up correctly because I watched upwards of 100 videos on mic audio when I upgraded. The point is, the impact creators have is more geared towards the subject of their main content. As I would not buy a PC based on your recommendation, but I did buy a mic based on it. Emerald, how dare you not come to me for your PC purchasing requirements and education? Let me go ahead and impart some knowledge on you. There is only one computer that everybody needs to buy. It is the greatest computer ever made, and it is the only computer that will ever exist into the future. That would be the trash can Mac Pro. If you do not own this, if you do not buy it, if you do not plan to own it in the future, shame on you. Shame on you. I am disgusted. You scum of the earth. Disgusting. You disgust me. How dare you? Seriously, though? I don't know where that came from. I apologize. I do think that you're partially correct. Some folks will absolutely have the knowledge that Jay was setting up his microphone incorrectly because they did watch 100 videos. But I think plenty of people in his audience had no idea that his video was conducted incorrectly, that his setup was done incorrectly. And those people will leave Jay's video thinking, well, the SM7B is terrible because it didn't work in Jay's situation, so instead I'll buy a Blue Yeti, set it up 2.5 feet away from my mouth, and EQ it to sound exactly like the SM7B. All things which are incorrect. The SM7B is not a terrible microphone, the Blue Yeti does not perform well 2.5 feet away from your mouth, and the Blue Yeti cannot be EQ'd to sound indistinguishable from the SM7B, to use Jay's terms. Now, although you were well-versed enough, although you had done your research enough to understand this, I understand why you would have this point of view, and why you would say, well, people don't go to Jay for audio advice. But what about all the people that go to Jay for their PC advice, and they don't really care about audio? They left that video probably thinking, well, Jay's right. Jay never misled me with computers, so why would he mislead me with audio? You are probably in the minority there of people in Jay's audience who have watched hundreds of videos on audio gear prior to upgrading. Jay didn't even watch one, it seems. He did eventually correct it. To be fair to him, he did correct it, so good on him. And I think that you're partially right. Some people will say, yeah, Jay's a PC guy. I'm not going to listen to him for audio. But then people who typically don't care about audio will leave Jay's video thinking that Jay was correct. That's my stance. I think it's perfectly fair for you to stand by your comment, but thank you very much, Emerald. I appreciate you. Next, we got a comment from Hades Stamps, and he says, I will say there should be a balance between different channels and variety within a channel. Hades Stamps, thank you very much for that comment, and I partially agree with you. As I mentioned in my discussion of this topic last week, I think that variety on your channel, within the focus of your channel, can be good. If you're doing snack food reviews, it wouldn't be a stretch to think that your audience would be interested in a video on how to cook pizza at home for cheap. To make this more solidified or in the real world, on my channel, I do mainly audio gear reviews, but I have also done reviews of cameras, and I even did a single computer review of the 2016 or 2017 MacBook, the 12-inch, and all of those videos that weren't specifically audio gear related, I framed them in a way of, is this good for podcasting and YouTube, which a lot of people who watch my videos for audio are doing. They are making videos and podcasts, so they may be interested in cameras and computers that are able to assist them in that goal. So if you're adding variety and your channel is niche, I think it's important to think about the audience you have and why they are watching, and ensure that you are framing the show and the variety content in a way that overlaps with the reason that people are watching your channel. Again, to reiterate this and drive this into people's heads, if you're making snack food reviews, don't upload videos of strippers dancing in a pool underwater and think, oh, they'll like this. They'll like this, sure. Why? Why would they like that? But if you're doing snack food reviews, talking about pizza, that makes sense. That makes sense. So just think, does this variety content on my channel make sense? Can I frame it in a way that would relate to why people are watching my channel? I think I just made it more confusing, but Hades Stamps, I appreciate you sending that in. Thank you very much. Now let's jump to my favorite part of the show, the Ask Bandrew segment. All right, if you have any questions that you want answered, you can head over to askbandrew.com. There are instructions on how to send in video, audio, or text-based questions. I prefer audio and video because then I don't have to read, and everybody who listens and watches this show gets a break from my annoying voice. So go ahead and send in the audio and video. It's so much better for everybody. We have a pre-voice submission. This is not a question. This is nothing. I am not going to answer this question because I addressed it last week, I think. But when I was going through my email, I found that they had sent in this version of the question, and I just want to include it for you to enjoy.
If all microphones had perfectly flat frequency response graphs, would they all sound the same?
Wow. That was amazing. I support this 100%. If anybody out there wants to send in their question in musical format, I am on board. Let me be a kid for a second. I stan this idea. Is that a kid thing? Is that what kids do nowadays? Get off my lawn! Okay, let's jump to the next voice submission. Thank you very much for that musical submission. That was amazing. Seriously, send them in. First voice submission question.
Hello, Bandrew. I have a question about microphones. I have a friend I play with a lot who also streams a little bit, and he has placed his Rode NT1 microphone above his monitor, and I don't think it works really well, but he doesn't want his microphone in his face. I think he is wrong, but what can you do? So I'm wondering, are there other microphones that work better for this situation? Maybe a shotgun microphones or even lavaliers? It will be interesting to hear what you have to say about it. And thank you for a great show. I really like it.
Thank you very much for that question, and I could sit here and wax poetic about this topic, but instead of telling you, I figured I would show you and do a demonstration for you, so I pulled out the Octava MK012 and the Rode NT1, and I recorded a quick sample at different positions with the microphones, and here is that sample to help you in addressing that issue. Okay, so here is a quick example of how the Rode NT1 sounds. It may be 1.5 feet, maybe 2 feet away from my mouth, but I also have the Octava MK012 set up at the exact same distance, and here is how it compares to the Rode NT1 at a distance. I imagine that the Octava is going to be doing a better job because I do have the hypercardioid capsule on that microphone, meaning it's more focused in the front. It does have a lobe of sensitivity in the rear, so if you have a lot of reflections coming off of your wall or your monitor, it may pick up a little bit more of that. But as far as reach, I imagine the Octava might sound a bit better at this distance. And now I have the NT1 about 2.5 feet away from my mouth, and I'm guessing this is more similar to what your friend's microphone sounds like. I do have quite a bit of treatment up, so if he can treat his room really, really well, I imagine he might be able to get away with it, but it will pick up a lot more of the ambient noise if he has a keyboard or a really loud mouse, because he will have to crank up his gain to level match them. But again, I also have the Octava set up, which is just above my head, maybe a foot away from my mouth, and it's not impeding my vision, it is not affecting what I can see, and it's not in front of my face. And because I'm able to get the Octava much closer to my mouth by essentially using it as a boom microphone, I'm able to improve that signal to background noise ratio, which will ultimately yield a much cleaner sounding recording. So perhaps your friend could opt for a small diaphragm condenser with a hypercardioid polar pattern or a shotgun microphone to get the microphone above his head pointed at his mouth, and that won't affect his vision, it won't get right in front of his mouth. And if you want to hear a few more, I also compared the NTG3 shotgun and the Rode M5s in last week's episode against the Octava MK012. So I hope that helped shed some light on some other options. Best of luck to your friend, and if he's able to, just get the NT1 closer to his mouth. It's a great sounding microphone. It's one of my all-time favorites, so I think if he can just get it closer to his mouth, he'd be much better off. And there you have it. I hope that helps you and also helps your friend. Maybe helps you convince your friend to set up their microphone in a better position, or maybe pick up a different microphone that might suit their needs a little bit better. Because if they do want a microphone multiple feet away from them, or if they just don't want it in front of their face, there are many different options there, so hope that helped. Thanks a lot for the question. Let's go to another voice submission, this time from Steve. Take it away, Steve.
Hello, Bandrew. This is Steve. I'm a part of a podcast show about playing role-playing games with my friends. When we decided to try out podcasting, I kind of fell into the role of figuring out all the audio setup, as well as learning the equipment necessary to have 7 microphones plugged into my computer. And your channel, Podcastage, has been one of the few invaluable sources for me to learn about audio engineering, recording, and terminology used in the industry. Our current setup is using USB mixer board with the 7 microphones, the Samsung Q2U. And I know there's nothing wrong with that mic. What is a good general rule for upgrading from a dynamic to a condenser microphone? Keeping in mind, my current mixer has the ability to supply 48 volts of phantom power. Would you wait until you could upgrade to a more mid to high range condenser microphone? Or is the quality difference from an entry-level dynamic mic to an entry-level condenser mic so significant that the upgrade should be considered? Before we got our equipment, the studio we were operating out of, we're using the AT2035. I kind of like the sound quality that they provided. The other question is, when you're upgrading microphones, should you purchase a mic based on the user of the mic? Different mics for different members of the podcast team based on their voice and how the mic's coloration is? Or is keeping the same mic beneficial for more consistent audio editing? Thank you very much for listening.
Holy cow. Steve, what a great set of amazing and very difficult to address questions. I am going to rely on samples to address a lot of these points, but I will address a few things. Should you save up for a mid to high tier condenser? I think you would definitely get a more noticeable upgrade if you're going from a $60 dynamic microphone to a $1,000 condenser microphone, but unfortunately, I can't say that's what you should do. You would have to sit down and determine if that investment is really worth it for you. I will say this, it will be noticeable to you. The difference will be noticeable to you. However, for your audience, in most cases, they won't notice, or at the very best, they just won't care. As long as your current audio is not painful to listen to and it's not distracting, most of our audiences do not care when we upgrade and switch microphones. So for podcasting, unless you are super into audio gear and just having really cool and fun toys to play with, like a manly reference cardioid, I think microphones that are over $500 are really unnecessary. Really, really unnecessary. Unless you're making the big bucks with your podcast, then more power to you. That's the first one of the day. More power to you. Go spend all the money you want on the microphones. But in all honesty, most podcasters could easily get by with nothing more than the Q2U or ATR 2100 and never receive any complaints from their audience. Now, as far as is the upgrade going to be noticeable from an entry-level dynamic to an entry-level condenser, let us jump to a sample where I compare the Samson Q2U to the AT2020, and you be the judge of that. So let's jump to that. And first up, I want to provide a very quick comparison between the Samson Q2U and the Audio-Technica AT2020. Both are connected over XLR cable to the 18i 22nd gen. So many model numbers it's starting to get confusing. The Q2U's gain is set at about 4 o'clock, and the AT2020 is set at around 1:30. But I have been switching back and forth between these two microphones so you can hear the difference and see if you think it's justifiable to upgrade from a $60 dynamic to a $100 or in your case $150 condenser. And we are not done yet because I also wanted to include a quick comparison between the Q2U and the Rode NT1, which in my opinion is one of the best mid-tier condenser microphones at $220 to $270. So let's jump to that right now. And the second comparison that I wanted to provide you is the Q2U versus the Rode NT1, which is a $220 or $270 microphone depending on the kit that you get with it. But I am switching back and forth between these to see if you think it would be justifiable and if there is a big noticeable difference between a $60 dynamic and a $270 condenser microphone at around the exact same distance. Oh, and the NT1's gain is set at noon, while the Q2U is just at about 4 o'clock, almost cranked on the 18i20. So here is this comparison. Then you have the question, should each user have a microphone for their specific voice, or should everybody on the podcast have the same microphone? Again, a very difficult question, but I address it in a comparison where I compare the SM7B to the Neumann TLM-103. So past Bandrew, do-do-do-do, do-do-do-do, go back now, do-do-do-do, do-do-do-do, go back now. Now, as far as having multiple different microphones on your podcast, I think that definitely is doable. We've seen that on the Howard Stern show, where Howard Stern uses the Neumann TLM-103, which is what you are hearing right now, and then his co-host uses the SM7B, and then his guests use a headset microphone. I don't know what that one is. But one thing that I think is really important if you are using different microphones is trying to do some kind of processing to match them a little bit. Because in my opinion, if you were to have somebody on an SM7B, which is a darker, smoother sounding microphone, and somebody on the Neumann TLM-103, which is a much brighter, more presence-boosted microphone, it could be a little bit jarring going from this darker sound to this much brighter sound. So I think you would need to do some kind of processing to try to match them a little bit and bring them a little bit closer to each other to ensure there aren't any jarring changes in the tone of the speakers on your podcast. So Steve, I hope those demonstrations and waxing poetic about the topic was able to assist you in your decision on whether or not you're going to stick with the Samson Q2Us for all 7 people, or if you are planning to upgrade to the AT2035. I can't tell you which one's going to be right because it is a case-by-case basis. Are you in a treated room? Do you have some kind of auto mixer that ducks people who are not speaking at that time? Because with condensers, regardless of the microphone you buy, you need to pay attention to the polar pattern and the background noise rejection, because if all 7 people are in the same room talking, there is going to be a tremendous amount of bleed. Unless, of course, you do have one of those auto mixers, the Duggan or Dugan auto mixer. I think it's pretty expensive, though. So that's my take on it. I hope that helped. Best of luck to you. Let us know what you decide to do. I cannot wait to hear what your final decision is. Best of luck to you. We have another voice submission, so go ahead and take it away.
Hello from Russia, Bandrew. Love your work and I wish you great luck. So here's my questions. First, will you ever review the Soyuz microphones? By the way, in Russia they properly called Soyuz, and the launcher in Russia only costs around $120. Yeah, just letting you know. Second, do you have any plans on reviewing studio monitors? Third, what do you think about the quality of my audio? I'm recording on the SE Electronics 2200. In the end, I just want to say thank you for all of your great work. Have a nice day and good luck.
Thank you very much for that question, and greetings from the US. I love hearing from everybody around the world. You are all so amazing and just so generous with your time to send in audio questions. I appreciate you so much. As far as your audio, sounds incredible. That microphone sounds great on you. Now, as far as will I review the Soyuz, did I say that right? Soyuz mics. Yes, I will be. I am holding up the Soyuz SU-023, and I must say that their microphones are some of the most stunning and unique looking microphone designs that I have come across, and it feels amazing. It just feels so sturdy and well put together, and I can tell you I have used this for a little bit. The SU-023, I believe it's called the Bomblet. This thing, it's got some beef to it. Where is the beef? It's with this microphone. As far as will I review some studio monitors? I would love to. I would love to go down that route and play with studio monitors. However, I simply do not have the space. I am having a hard enough time storing and cataloging and finding places for all of the microphones and audio interfaces and preamps that I have that I cannot imagine how difficult a task it would be if I had to start storing large studio monitors as well. So unless I were to buy a standalone studio with a massive warehouse for storing all of the audio gear that I have, the limitation is space. I don't have it, so I am not able to do that at this time. Maybe in the future, if I become super famous and get billions of dollars. Probably not going to happen, so I'm just sticking with microphones like the Soyuz SU-023. Thank you so much for that, and thank you for sharing how to properly pronounce the microphone name, the brand, and I'm jealous that the launcher only costs $120 there. Best of luck to you in all that you do. You sound great. Keep up the awesome work. We'll go to one last voice submission. This comes from Ovid. So take it away, Ovid. Future editor Bandrew here chiming in with a correction. I call this gentleman Ovid for the remainder of the episode. That is not his name. His name is Omid. I will boil this down to the fact that I have COVID on the brain, I guess. But I apologize, Omid. Thank you very much for sending this in, and whenever you hear me say his name in the future of this episode, just know that it is Omid, not Ovid. I apologize.
Hey, Bandrew. My name is Omid, and I've been a big fan of your YouTube channel. And recently I found out that you also have a podcast, which I didn't know before. And I was listening to one of your episodes, and you said that you were not so good with finance before, and then you took some courses or read some books, and which helped. So I wonder if you can introduce any courses or any books to us, so it might help with us and with finance. And thank you, and have a nice day.
Ovid, what an amazing, amazing question. As far as books and courses that I can recommend, I can't really recommend many because I did not read many finance books or take many undergraduate finance classes or classes focused on consumer finance. The main classes that I took were master's level. That's what I got my master's in. They were stuff like financial statement analysis, investment management, risk management in derivatives and using derivatives to hedge your risk in the future, stuff along those lines, which is not very beneficial or helpful to consumer finance. There is one main show and host that I would recommend for people who are interested in getting to a more healthy financial state, and it's somebody who doesn't just offer advice, but he actually kind of gets you excited to not spend money and save money, which is very bizarre. And the host is Dave Ramsey. And I will admit, the show can get a little bit redundant because he takes callers. Those callers have very similar issues. I went to college. I got $100,000 in debt. I bought a home. I lost my job. A lot of the issues are very repetitive. But in listening to that, it really drives in and drills the points into your head about how you should approach thinking about money, how you should approach thinking about savings and spending. And it really is helpful to put things into perspective and learn, okay, if I put away $10 every week, I'll end up a trillionaire. That's me exaggerating. He doesn't say that, but he has really neat little tips and tricks in there that really get you excited for saving, thinking, well, in 20 years, I'll have a lot of money. I can buy that car that I want when I'm retired and actually have time to drive it. I can buy that home that I want and be out of debt in 10 years and no longer be indebted to this bank that won't leave me the F alone. So Dave Ramsey is who I would recommend reading or watching or listening to. I will link his podcast and video show in the episode notes. Really great information in there. I will say at times he does get religious, which kind of turns me off a little bit, but all the finance information in there is very, very good and very easily accessible. So I hope that Dave is able to help you there. Best of luck to you. I hope it helps. And thank you so much for the questions. And I think that's actually going to wrap up for today because there was no other news, no nothing. Boring week with people screaming about viruses and nonsense that I don't give a damn about. I should say, there is a new BandrewSays.com website because I found a new website designer, website formatter thing that takes the RSS feed from my show and turns it into a website. I think it looks so much better, much more modern feeling, and I'm really enjoying it. So let me know what you think of the new website. I hope you enjoy it. I hope it's easier to navigate and easier to listen to the shows and all of that stuff. Until next week, I hope you have an amazing Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Next Sunday, I will talk at you. I appreciate you for coming by, staying safe, doing your thing, hiding from people. We're alike. People, gross. This is nothing new. People are disgusting. Why would I want to hang out with them? Yeah, I get you. All right, I'll talk to you next week. Love you guys. Bye.
This has been a Geeks Rising production. Your executive producer is Bandrew Scott. For more information, head over to www.geeksrising.com.